It seems to me everyone is here, so good morning once again. My name is Ilya Daronov. I'm Executive Director of RPK, and I will be the moderator of the session of today. We have only 1 hour, so dear speakers, please keep up with the agenda, because in an hour we'll have to leave this room. And besides, dear speakers, if you have 1 minute late, you will see it on the board. So it's the second day of Urban Forum of Moscow. It's great that it takes place here in the heart, the center of Moscow, the Zaryadye Park, which has become the new symbol of our capital. It's so great that there are a lot of French guests here. We're so happy. So I would like to welcome you that the French team has become the world FIFA champion. So let us welcome France and the French team. So what unites Russia and France? So, and this is not only the winning of the French team, but we have very similar projects with similar targets, Greater Paris and Greater Moscow. So the target is the same, but the ways and the instruments are different. So today we're going to discuss specific features of Greater Paris and Greater Moscow, and I hope it will be useful both for representatives of Russia, of Moscow, and of Paris. And I would like to give the floor to Vladimir Zhitkin, head of the Department for New Territory Development Department, Moscow. The floor is yours. Good morning, dear friends. I will try to speak a bit slower for the interpreters. Still, I would like once again to express my congrats to our colleagues from France. I've seen the final, and I saw how the French football players played it, and it was really a professional team. And I think that the majority of the international fans just were the French team fans. So my congrats once again. Clear enough, every year we have new significant events here. Our friendship started 300 years ago, actually. You remember when Peter the Great went to France, and since then, French-Russian relations started, and we are still friends. 6 years ago, we carried on that great tradition, and we started a joint project, Greater Paris and Greater Moscow. So we have common goals and common principles we fulfill, creating these two territories. So this is the polycentric model of development of the modern transport infrastructure. Then we also creation of the workplaces on newly integrated territories, also increase of the living space amount, and conservation of the ecological principles. Since the very first moment of our project, we've become friends with Maurice Leroy. We see each other every year, and he really inspires us because he started the project Greater Paris earlier than we. We also conducted an international competition where a lot of international companies participated, and a French company was one of the winners. Many principles introduced in the project winner we're trying to fulfill now, and they are still the basic principles for the general plan for new territories of Greater Moscow. A polycentric model of development is our basic principle, and we stuck to it, creating the general plan, and when we've never changed it, provided the new territory correlates to the project because it is polycentric and the territory is huge. It is 1.5 times bigger than the traditional Moscow. There are a lot of forests and woods, and there, near the forests and in the middle of forests, there are territories which are villages or cities or towns. So the principle is polycentric, and we think we shouldn't change this principle. In each center for urban development, we try to construct all the facilities so that the citizens of the Greater Moscow feel comfortable, so that they could have all the conveniences, saving more than 1 hour, because they do not have to get to central Moscow. So we try to do so that there in the Greater Moscow there are parks, recreation facilities, as well as educational and sports facilities. So let's look globally at the general plan for Greater Moscow development. So today, the plan is being launched as a complex. Still, we need more careful approach to places, districts, and quarters to make them good and comfortable for the residents. It's quite clear, and we will try to do our best to fulfill this plan in near future, studying our experience, studying international and national experience. So quarter construction is a pixel. It is the new approach which differs a lot from what they did in Moscow 5 or 6 years ago. Maybe the pictures are not that representative, but still you can see that there is a green, there are no cars. Unfortunately, still there are no people still, but I think that the people are there and they do feel comfortable. So this is our plan and project for next several years. So this is in short what particularly we're doing as part of the plan, the Greater Moscow. Marat Husnulin showed it yesterday during the plenary, and I tried to reflect here of all the cultural facilities, transport infrastructure, metro, buses, public transport, and railways. So everything we're trying to develop as a complex. So At the same time, we construct highways and metro, and we're planning to construct more than 220 kilometers of highway. Everything is being constructed at the same time. Speaking about metro, 6 stations will be completed by the end of the year, and more than 100 we're going to construct further and within the next 4 or 5 years. Well, Moscow will be much more comfortable, and already today it has become much easier to go from one area to another way. Sergei Kachura will prove that it has already become much easier today. So, and thus, we have an opportunity for construction of new facilities. So this new structure is balanced. We have all the energy supply sources up to 2035. We didn't limit to the plan already approved. We are trying to construct more new pipelines for energy supply, for gas supply, for water supply. There are still questions, there are still challenges, but it is quite okay. Moscow area hasn't been as much populated as the central Moscow, so we have room for communication, we have room for new construction. One of the new drivers for construction is creation of workplaces. This is one of our basic principles, as well as one of the basic principles for our French colleagues, because it is quite clear that workplaces do not only stick people to their places, but add more money to taxes. It's quite an uneasy issue. Still, we worked out some motivational plans for our investors, and they know it very well. So I'm sure that in recent years, the demand for new working places will increase further. So speaking about working places, technoparks and industrial parks are popular. We have 20 facilities. Also, we develop new schools, outpatient clinics, and the figures go up. So, recreation and parks are basic areas. And we think that the green areas and the parks are most precious for us. So more slides about parks, and one more important slide. So more surveys were conducted, and in accordance with them, 71% of Moscow residents assess positively the evaluation, and even 34% of Muscovites are ready to go to the Greater Moscow, and 71% of Muscovites are satisfied with what is going on in Moscow and in the Greater Moscow today. Yesterday, Mayor Sobyanin and Vice Mayor Husnulin spoke a lot about the issue that not only a lot of construction is fulfilled, but a lot of social objects are created. So I would like to give the floor to Vice Speaker of the National government of France, Maurice Leroy. So tell us, please, so what is most important for you? What do you find any similar features between what is going on in Paris and in Moscow? And is there anything we can learn from each other? Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here today with my friend Vladimir. We are really good friends. Thank you for your congrats with the winning of the French national team. I love football. And when I was young, I played football a lot. And on my behalf, I can say that the Russian national team has done a lot. They lost against the team of Croatia, but it is a very strong team. So the game has been very beautiful. I've said it during the plenary, and I would like to repeat it once again. So you call me here vice speaker of the national government of France, but you know, I was appointed yesterday. I was elected yesterday. I was to be elected, but I was elected yesterday, and I think that it happened due to the forum. So now I am the vice president of the House. And it's my honor and privilege to be here and to exchange our opinions with my colleagues. So, President Putin and President Macron decided to start the so-called Trianon dialogue. It's a great idea, which is in line with the tradition of Russian-French friendship. I think it's really a significant project. Being an economist, I can support that our economic friendship has long stories. So, Greater Paris and Greater Moscow. Vladimir, do you remember? For a long time, we've been discussing the basics of the Greater Paris, Greater Moscow, the particular features of South-West Paris. That was the concept, and we've learned a lot from each other. Vladimir goes on doing great job concerning territories. Our problems are also similar. We have transport collapse, so we cannot, and we shouldn't envy each other. We have traffic jams, both in Paris and in Moscow. One very interesting figure. Moscow, like Paris, is responsible for about 1/3 the GDP of our countries. Yesterday, Mayor Sobyanin said there would be no increase of the Russian economy without economic increase of Moscow and Greater Moscow. The same thing concerns Paris. Until Paris and Greater Paris starts increasing and improving its economy, France will not move forward either. Once, answering a question by a moderator, and the question was, what can Paris and Moscow learn from each other? I'm a strange politician. I'm trying always to answer the question you ask me, really. So let me specify. Our relations are not vertical, so I cannot say that, well, they have the same basics. So one project was the fundament for the other one. So we cannot Xerox or copy elements of each other's experience. We try to be mutually beneficial. and our projects are like this. So answering your question, I can say it is not important which project started earlier. It is not important. Since the very beginning, we started to learn from each other. Vladimir has represented today a very interesting and very specific presentation. So let's be honest today. Etienne Guillot, head of the project Grand Paris, will speak today. He started that project, actually. One of our major projects is a big driverless metro underground. We've been proud of it always. Today, we come to Moscow, and we can see how great, how tremendously the Moscow underground, Moscow metro develops. We can see how many new metro stations you launch. 64 new stations. We cannot be as fast, let me admit it.
But of course, Moscovites also learn something from us. Vladimir and Marat, in old day, they come for studies to us. But now I must admit that students or pupils really could exceed us. So Gérard Mestralet, president of NG Company, and Manuel Forest, head of Bouygues, they all, during a meeting of investors, they all told me that they are really impressed by Moscow. One of our colleagues said, I've not been to Moscow for 12 years now, and I don't recognize the city. So during our meeting with Mr. Marat Husnulin, so I would like to congratulate the team of Greater Moscow with such stunning achievements. And the era changed. We don't live in the era of pure figures, but we work for people. And yesterday, the mayor of Moscow confirmed that we put the human being in the center of our cares, of our project. The urban topic and human topic should go along together. And now I would like to pass it over to Kirill Rodin from FCIOM. So he's head of Department of Working with the governmental bodies. So his work is about how people perceive the changes. Kirill, 2 minutes, please. So the problem is common for Moscow and for Paris. Thank you so very much. So we are carrying out a huge complex of research focused on development of the new territories. And I would like to present some results, some polling of public opinion. So first, one point I would like to highlight: the total estimation of changes. So first of all, we see, and you see the breakdown, New Moscow in green and Old Moscow marked in gray, and we see that the estimates were quite high. But if we would also cover aspects like, I'm sorry, yes, could I please go one slide back? So, regarding how a situation can be changed, 71% in New Moscow say that the change is for the better in Old Moscow. So the percentage is also high, about 61%, because in the new territories the level of support is higher. So how do I use the clicker? Sorry. Regarding the degree of support of the decision taken in 2012 on adding new territories. So we see that, again, the level is higher, and it's even higher in new territories, and the third aspect on how do you estimate the policy of Moscow government in residential construction. And we see that residents of the new Moscow really stand out in terms of support. 60% are in favor of the new changes. So these figures are a proof of a high credit of confidence, even for innovations. So required to implement some new interesting projects. So with a credit like this, we can allow some sort of venture in terms of experimental projects. In terms of problematic issues and the vision shared by different groups of residents. So today, both residents of the old Moscow and the new Moscow point out the lack of recreational areas, conditions for rest. And interestingly, I would like to point out that as for places where people would prefer to live with their children, what makes me happy that in the new territories about 56% really see the conditions as more favorable, although residents of the old Moscow don't yet believe that. Why is it important? So we asked, what do you believe? What categories of population see conditions of living in the new Moscow as favorable? And we see two groups: young people, which start their own families, and the second group is families with children. So, and clearly, the first group will shortly move into the second group. So, who are our allies in developing the new territories? Of course, it's young people, and it's an evidence for us that we cannot only use modernization for developing territories, but also to develop them in an innovation way, because our allies among social agents present there and where people see their potential for development, so they include younger generations, which are quite flexible in the way they perceive innovative decisions and are not bound by traditional patterns. Next, I will not comment on that slide as problematic issues. I will not put any emphasis here, but I'd like to highlight that, again, transportation development in the territory is remaining among the main problems, and it has been one of the key focus areas for new Moscow development. As for the attitude to developing new territories, so we see how Muscovites see the young people. So they see them as the group you can put a stake on. And people in new and old Moscow are unanimous that this is the appropriate territory for the young people. So we tried to test the territories of industrial zones for the needs of future generations. And we see that Muscovites in old and in new Moscow say we shouldn't do that because we are actually the next generation and we want to live today. So this is the marker for demand of development. Kirill, if possible, could you please make a conclusion? Yes, so not a problem. This is my last slide. So we see that the demand for renovation in these territories is quite high. Yes, and another conclusion I would like to draw. It's a simple conclusion. We see that today the government of Moscow has high credit of confidence to implement that territory for developing the new territories, and we see that among its allies are big social groups, and we understand what type of groups can become the driver of such development. And given the specific features of groups which today are focused on being present in the territory of New Moscow, that it's possible to implement some very interesting, innovative projects in developing Moscow. Yes, we will continue to discuss innovations later on. One of the problems we touched upon, so as Maurice said, both Paris and Moscow has a lot to do. So let's check about what's the situation in Paris. So Etienne Guillot, the General Director of the Chamber of Industry and Commerce of Paris and Île-de-France. Many thanks. So first of all, may I thank you for inviting me here. So I'm coming to Moscow from 2011 for many years, and I'm truly satisfied to note that the two teams worked together on the project of Greater Moscow. As for the Grand Paris, the transportation infrastructure has a primary goal to link together different regions, different quarters of Pyria without having to go to the center of the city. So we have the railway, but you should avoid abusing it. A railway should not be an obstacle for people who want to travel and who want to live. And we need to facilitate the link between different neighborhoods, but without hindering the way different enterprises and sites work. So what did we do? We decided to add some extra ring roads around Paris, and we put an emphasis on the public transportation. A great point in common between the Greater Moscow and Grand Paris is that we develop the transportation infrastructure. We focus on public transportation, and in Big Moscow you have ways of transportation going through the central part of the city, which is not the case with the Paris. Another difference is that, if I understood it correctly, the boundaries of Moscow were shifted in the southwestern part of the city. But from the times of Napoleon III, we have the situation that the Paris region stretches in all the directions. We have new railway stations in different parts of the city. We see new flows of residents coming to the Paris region, and we need to provide them with transportation. So that's why we have to create stations and railway terminals. So France was based on the project which was underway in the times of Nicolas Sarkozy, but we don't see ourselves as government people. And this is the difference between the projects in the Big Moscow and Grand Paris. If you would look into the course of the project, the surprise I feel when I watch development of the Big Moscow, so it makes me feel that we need to continue with our project in Grand Paris. So, and Grand Paris as a project had various stages: construction, detailed work under thorough control by Maurice Leroy, but so he did a great job. But we needed to confirm this project with the new government, and the new president confirmed the project, and also the regional council had to approve the project, and it was linked to a number of changes. So why am I saying it? Because I would like to highlight that the need for the unity between all the parties which are involved in the project. And we are not keeping the pace due to all the changes we faced, but by 2030, we hope that we will be able to reach the necessary results as for bigger Moscow development project. So you successfully finished the project by the World Cup. We also want to be through by the Olympic Games in 2024. So also it has to do with the renovation of Charles de Gaulle airport in Paris. And as for development of the underground, if you take line 15, which would allow us to cross the city from south to the north, we need to renovate, upgrade it, and I hope that by 2024 we'll be able to do that. I hope we are successful in that. And I would also like to highlight our joint work on Big Moscow project together with Marat Husnulin, together with Mayor Sergei Sobyanin, and we really are encouraged by some ideas from Moscow, and Moscow is encouraged by our ideas in terms of infrastructure, transportations, public services like healthcare institutions, and so on. And I'm very happy to say that together we can make our progress with respective speed. Yes, so Etienne mentioned some new ideas, and we will talk about innovation, about new technologies that can be implied in the new territories. And I would like to hand it over to Emmanuel Forrest, the Executive Vice President of Bouygues Group of Companies and General Director of Bouygues Europe.
Thank you very much for introduction. I do not represent Bouygues Group. I do represent, but it's been our honor and privilege to take part in the Paris construction and also for the Russian Center of Culture. It is the central of culture of Paris in Moscow. Let me go back telling you about the history of Grand Paris, or Greater Paris, historically. So the first step for us was when Francis Bock created the Bouygues Group, and it happened about 70 years ago. We needed to create bigger rural areas in Paris, like Cheromушки in Moscow. We had will and power, but we face the same problems. This is the second step for creating new citizen towns. In Saint-Canaveline, next to Versailles, our central office is located. We had challenges so that those new citizen towns do not become just distant quarters. Greater Paris is a great project. Grand Paris Express links it with the central Paris. You know what it is. In Moscow, I've tried to go by Moscow Central Ring. What was the result for our company, Bouygues? We constructed the Tunnel Chetami. Mostly, we work very rapidly, and it means that in Paris very soon we'll have great underground like you have in Moscow. So we didn't want those areas to be just new dormitory district. we also launched a competition. Let's create the metropole of Grand Paris in the metro. So that was a competition where more than 50 projects by different companies participated, and our big group won 10 projects, so 10 projects for big construction and 4 more projects. So what is Urban Era? It is the city operator for smart, comfortable and green areas. For that, we launched a special department for real estate. So we are part of a consortium, and we are trying to launch a special app for Greater Paris. One more significant project is called Sheraton-Bercy as part of Grand Paris. We won that project as an international consortium. This is a project for planning of a new area, a new district. The target is to make this area more open and close to Paris. So we improved a great territory. And we were success. It's another project, Sheraton-Bercy. Mayor Sobyanin and many other people stated yesterday how important it is that Greater Moscow and Greater Paris are digitalized. So we're trying to do it. These are new areas for comfortable life. This is the project. There will be a big tower, a green tower in the middle of it, and it will be great. It is a new step for us because before we were involved in construction of a new district. Now we are part of construction and planning of everything in this great district, and I think it's the right approach. We also have great experience in working here in Russia. In the Soviet times, we were partners with Professor Fyodorov. And I think now it's time for us to not to be as constructors, but to work in partnership, making a new consortium, French-Russian one. We can create a step-by-step project for some districts. I think that Moscow won the organization of FIFA to 2018. I love this song about Moscow. Moscow is my beloved city. It says, "Thank you, Moscow. Thank you very much." It's so nice. So not only when you praise Moscow, but say that you would like to make something like we have here in Moscow. Kommunarka is another interesting project. Cheremушки has been a dormitory district of older times, so Kommunarka is a new one. Nail Sufulin, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. Dear friends, dear French friends, I would like to thank you for your experience you've shared with us. We are trying to implement it here in Moscow. Kommunarka is one of the drivers of the greater Moscow. So our new territory development department and research project are responsible for that. It's a new story for us. being one of the operator for complex improvement of the territory. We will not only construct new metro stations, hubs, but also comfortable environment for the city. Kommunarka is a great plan and is part of the mayor's plan controlled by Zhitkin. So we have the infrastructure, we've planned it. We're constructing new metro stations, two hubs, schools, hospitals. All this will look and be a new environment, new territory, comfortable for the residents. So I hope that our work in collaboration with our French colleagues in company Engie, which invited us and presented the approach, which is now fulfilled as part of Greater Paris development, will have a new status and will be a new step of our correlation. So we also have discussed this with the chairman of French Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and it is most significant for this territory. We'll have new infrastructure, new services, and I hope each of you will participate in it. So I would like to wish all of us all the success for two great projects, Greater Moscow and Grand Paris. Thank you very much. Social infrastructure and spaces is one more important issue, which should be solved in Greater Moscow and Greater Paris. And I would like to give the floor Sergei Kachura, CEO of GRAN 101, will share with us. So in Moscow, there is a project, and you deal with it. Oh, thank you. No, you're lucky, and I'm lucky to be born in Krasnodar, a great town which sometimes is called small or little Paris. And now I take part in the project which is called Greater Moscow. 6 years ago, a big territory has become part of Moscow. So Moscow borders went 2.4 times away from Moscow. Answering the question about similar features of the Moscow of today and the Moscow of those times, I can say there was nothing in common. The infrastructure was poor. The transport links were poor. Today, the situation has changed. That was complicated further because the areas, the lands, were private. And so we tried to win the competition with the government of the Moscow area, but we lost. We tried to work in collaboration with the Moscow city government, and we succeeded in it. So we agreed to some specific issues. We worked out a plan specifying the blocks of flats, the amount of stores, some other specific features. We also discussed social environment and social spaces, and that was one more particular feature of our project. So last year, together with the International Bureau, we started creating social environment on the territory of more than 100 hectares. Moscow has given a lot to this territory, but also took a lot from it. All this information is transparent. You can find it in the open sources. Last year, Moscow invested more than 100 billion rubles. Developers take their responsibility, creating social infrastructure and urban infrastructure and area as well. We invested more than 2.5 billion rubles for social facilities construction. Let's look at our construction and into costs. So you can see that 7,000 rubles from 1 square mile of housing we invest to social infrastructure, 3,000 rubles to complex improvement. This kind of work was really successful. This is proved by the fact that the population of the new Moscow has increased 2.5 times. It's a long project, and we'll have more time, we'll need more time, but the first stage has been successful. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anatoly has said that it is not enough just to construct a tower. We need to construct the environment around it. One of the reasons why people go to Greater Moscow is that they want fresh air. Ecology is one more significant issue. And I'd like to give the floor to Anna Kurbatova, Vice President for the Institute of City Construction and System Project. You know, I would like to start with soccer as well, but I would like to speak about football as being, as a woman. Women always help everyone. I think that Moscow, being a she city, has helped the French team to win. I'm also happy that we're here and we change, and our ideas change, and our trends change. Dwelling on it, let me highlight that a lot unites us, that is ideas, economy, but it's most important that the earth we live in unites us. It's our common earth. Nature doesn't have borders, so we have the same natural scaffold with the Great Paris also, and the atmosphere of agglomeration we also share. So what is agglomeration? Michel René also was the first who used this term, and this is also important for us. Semyonov-Tinshansky, our scientist, called agglomeration an economic city, speaking about the Greater Moscow, the new Moscow, this which is a mega project. Let me specify that we developed to southwest. Actually, this project is a start. It's a driver. So I'm sure that agglomeration is not a target, but a process. So this specific feature of new Moscow development pushed agglomeration processes to the new level. And they already have their good impact on the development of Moscow and Moscow area. Why am I really convinced in this? Our company, our institute, has created more than 50 projects for the Moscow area, and also a lot of projects for Moscow. For us, Moscow and the Moscow area has always been the territory which does not have very specific borders, and comfort shouldn't have its borders. And yesterday, our mayor said that economy develops when the society, when the structure goes beyond its borders, including comfort. Let me be short about the method and assessment we used. Sometimes we think that ideas are the basement of the project, but actually economy is after that, and the fundament of the pyramid is the territory, because the territory is the basis. Our project should be sustainable, and it can be sustainable only in this case. Our territory is the scaffold making any project sustainable or not. So look here, the metal construction is the basis to make the whole construction better. So this kind of scaffold is illustrated by the territory of New Moscow and Greater Moscow. They unite, they function on the basis of this pyramid and these principles. Thank you very much. We have 4 speakers, and I will give the floor to Denis Kolokolnikov. So could you please speak about new working places in New Moscow? I'll try to be short. We constructed more than 250 square meters of housing, so we have only 100,000 population more. So it is not enough. So we'll need more. We have commercial centers, we have offices, but what we are lacking in for the new Moscow is idea. Maybe a new university can be this kind of a basis. Let me give the floor to Irina Ilyina, CEO of the Institute of Regional Development. Yes, we've taken part together with Adrian Gunberg and Sergei Tkachenko in this project. The project is really interesting, but the process, how it is being launched, sometimes is not that rapid. I agree with the previous speaker. We need some drivers because there are trends. It will develop, but we would like to have some ideas or events to be drivers of the development. Yulia Borisova, projects architect. You know, I also can see the problem from the inside because I take part in the architecture of the city of Troitsk. The previous speakers are right. From the point of view of construction or hardware, we are developing rapidly. Speaking about software or the idea, we are lacking in it. So we need to have the idea why this part, why this new Moscow is good. If we do it, then we'll make the territory good and attractive to the population. Alexei Razhodchikov, Mosage Project, Vice-CEO. Thank you very much. For 2 days, we've had a great discussion with our colleagues from France. We discussed the city of the future. We've discussed the projects Greater Moscow and Greater Paris. What is necessary for that? Goodwill is not important. Is important, but not enough. Sometimes we do not have enough feedback from our population, from our citizens. That is why we need to hear their voices. It is also important that we have discussion with our colleagues as part of the Trianon dialogue, and the next year we'll meet in the city of Canas. We'll go on these discussions with our colleagues. Yes, this year we've been to the Cannes, and next year we'll have one more discussion on this significant issue. Vladimir, the floor. Yes, I wanted to tell you about the new book we've prepared. But speaking about educational clusters, in the Moscow area, we have 3 territories of about 100 hectares. This territory will be used for education. Educational clusters are the drivers for the territory development, so believe me, we think about it, we do take it into consideration, and we'll develop education. Every year, by Urban Forum, we prepare books. This year, this book is about people of the new Moscow, of those who live there now and of those who lived there before historically. So let me invite you to the presentation of this new book after this session. Thank you very much. I would like to thank once again our guests, our dear speakers. So I would like to congratulate you on the fact that our Urban Forum is so successful. Once again, congrats to the French team, and have a nice day.